The next ready matter is Antar and Lodice. Let's see. So for the plaintiff?
Don Cretella for Ms. Antar, Your Honor.
All right. And sir?
Matthew Lodice.
You're representing yourself, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we have a number of post-judgment motions on the docket, but I think we need to begin by, unless they're all settled, just assuming they're not, we'll need to begin by hearing from Family Relations. And since this Family Relations counselor is wanted in another courtroom, I would like to take that up first, as long as nobody else minds.
No objection.
All right. So let's get our Family Relations counselor sworn in, I think. Or actually, it's not really sworn testimony, right? What are the services that you perform?
The general case.
Okay. Okay. So stand where you can sit.
You solemnly swear, solemnly and sincerely affirm, as the case may be, that the evidence you shall give concerning this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, or upon penalty of perjury. If so, please say I do.
I do.
Please state your name and business address for the record.
Anna Maria Baranowski, 235 Church Street, New Haven.
Okay. So, Baranowski, you can begin wherever makes sense for you.
Okay. It's quite lengthy, Your Honor, so just bear with me.
All right.
Okay. This post-judgment matter involves Theodora Antar and Matthew Lodice and their 3-year-old minor child in common, Angelina Lodice, with the date of birth of 5/21/2019. The matter went to judgment on November 7th, 2019. At that time, the parents agreed to share joint legal custody and that primary residence of the minor child would be with Ms. Antar. At that time, specific dates were outlined for Mr. Lodice's parenting time until January 12th of 2020. Thereafter, the parents were to arrange his access with Angelina on a week-by-week basis. The parents returned to court in July of 2021 after Ms. Antar and Mr. Lodice filed several motions to include motions for modification and contempt. On April 12th, 2022, the parents reached an agreement to include the following. Ms. Antar will drop off the child to the home of the paternal grandmother each Friday and any time after 8:30 a.m., commencing April 15th, 2022. Mr. Lodice will drop off the child to daycare each Monday by 9 a.m. Specific language was incorporated into the agreement in the event that daycare was not in session. Shortly thereafter, Ms. Antar and Mr. Lodice filed several motions to include motions for modification and contempt. This is the family's third referral to the Family Services Division. On December 5th, 2022, the court referred this matter for a general case management. Family Services was tasked with contacting the Department of Children and Families, current and previous mental health providers for the plaintiff, defendant, and the minor child. Information gathered should include treatment dates, diagnosis, treatment compliance, and any information relating to each parent's ability to parent. It should be noted that Mr. Lodice did not provide any of his respective treatment providers to Family Services. Specifically, Mr. Lodice reports that he engaged in individual counseling once. However, he claims that he cannot remember the name or the contact information for that treatment provider. On December 14th, 2022, Family Services spoke with Libby Stofick-Edrin via telephone. She reports that the agency she previously worked for, called Stanford Counseling Center, shut down during the COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, any records relative to her treatment services with Ms. Antar are inaccessible. On December 14, 2022, Family Services spoke with Program Manager Courtney Sherman from Child First Study via telephone. She reports that Angelina became involved as a self-referral from Ms. Antar. She reports that when the assigned clinician went out for the first visit, Ms. Antar explained that she shared legal decision-making with Mr. Lodice. Thus, the clinician made an effort to reach Mr. Lodice. On September 29, 2022, after the clinician explained her role and model and services, Mr. Lodice reported that he was not interested in the services. At that time, Ms. Antar reports that the parties were going back to court and would follow up afterward. However, there has not been any involvement since that time. On December 19, 2022, Family Services received a letter from Charmaine Samuda dated December 19, 2022. The letter notes that Ms. Antar began receiving individual therapy on November 21, 2019. It is reported that Ms. Antar's symptom presentation and reports were consistent with the given diagnosis of major depressive disorder, moderate. Treatment goals were established, and the therapeutic interventions included cognitive behavioral therapy. Ms. Antar expressed an initial willingness to attend therapy sessions regularly, as well as apply recommendations of evidence-based strategies offered. In later sessions, Ms. Antar expressed apprehensiveness to the recommendations made, primarily the recommendation for a psychopharmacological intervention. Ms. Antar informed Ms. Samuda in May of 2020 via text message, quote, "feeling worse after our sessions." Thus, Ms. Samuda recommended Ms. Antar find a new therapist whose style and strategies may resonate and prove beneficial. On December 20th, 2022, Family Services received a letter from Austin Felon dated December 20th, 2022. The letter reports that he provided treatment for Ms. Antar from November 3rd, 2021 until January 4th, 2022. It is noted that Ms. Antar attempted to engage in specific therapy for processing trauma and relieving symptoms of PTSD. Given the brief amount of time Ms. Antar was engaged in treatment with Mr. Felon, he reports that there was little to no improvement in her symptoms. On December 20th, 2022, Family Services spoke with Mr. Felon via telephone. He reports that Ms. Antar was referred by a previous clinician of whom recommended EMDR treatment. He explains that EMDR treatment is specialized treatment primarily used to treat PTSD and the effects of trauma. Mr. Felon explains that Ms. Antar did not get far in her treatment with him due to her brief tenure. He reports that Ms. Antar's treatment ended following a particular event. He explains that he was 10 to 15 minutes late to a session with Ms. Antar. At that time, Ms. Antar expressed that she was unhappy and frustrated, therefore treatment was terminated.
Right, hold on, what were the dates with this person,
That she was engaged in treatment?
with Mr. Felon?
From November 3rd, 2021
Yep.
until January 4th, 2022.
Okay, thank you.
On December 21st, 2022, Family Services received a letter from Lancia Blotchley dated December 21st, 2022. The letter reports that Ms. Antar has been receiving therapy from her since February 22nd of 2022. Ms. Antar is diagnosed with PTSD, chronic and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder per history. It is stated that Ms. Antar attends therapy sessions every 2 weeks for about 45 to 55 minutes. Ms. Antar is described to be consistent and makes good use of her time. It is noted that Ms. Antar rarely cancels but notifies if need be. The letter notes that Ms. Antar's treatment goals are to implement strategies for maintaining calm, such as practicing gratitude and mindfulness daily. Ms. Antar is described to be working on her goal objectives diligently and making good progress. On January 9th, 2023, Family Services received one report from the Department of Children and Families. The most recent DCF report was received on October 20th, 2022. It is noted that the caller reported that Mr. Lodice had left their child alone for the last 6 weeks with his 2 older sons. Additionally, it was noted that Mr. Lodice was not following the court order, which includes right of first refusal language. It is reported that the months prior, the minor child rubs one of her stuffed animals on her vagina or lays on top of it and humps it. The minor child reported to the caller, quote, "Mousy is tickling me," and Mousy is her toy. The caller told her, quote, "We don't do that on our vagina. Did anyone else ever tickle you on your vagina?" She said yes. When the caller asked her who, she said Mr. Lodice's 2 sons. The caller was getting dressed, and Angelina said, quote, "Oh, Mommy, why do you have tits?" The caller is concerned that the child is being exposed to sexual behavior. The caller reports that Mr. Lodice has severe sexual addiction and has sex in front of his sons. It is noted that Mr. Lodice recorded a video of himself having sex in front of one of his sons. DCF interviewed the minor child during a home visit at Ms. Antar's residence on October 21st, 2022. She appeared alert and healthy with no physical bruises. The minor child reported to feel safe at both her mother and father's homes. The minor child was able to articulate the siblings that lived at each parent's residence. A forensic interview took place on October 31st, 2022 at the New Britain Police Department. It is noted that the minor child appeared in her Halloween costume and appeared alert and healthy with no physical bruises. During the interview, the minor child did not make any disclosures regarding sexual abuse. It is noted that the minor child was able to answer most of the questions and articulate her answers to the interviewer. The detective working on this case, Detective Steves, stated that the criminal investigation will not be pursued at this time as there was no disclosure. It is reported that on November 10th, 2022, Angelina's pediatrician reported to have no concerns regarding her behaviorally, developmentally, or medically. On November 15th, 2022, Bunny Village Daycare reported to DCF that there are no concerns regarding the minor child behaviorally or developmentally. Specifically, Ms. Swan reported that the minor child does have a hard time behaviorally at pickup or drop-off. It is noted that both the mother and the father consistently get the daycare involved with family issues and payment. Ms. Swan reported that they have not received documentation that Mr. Lodice is not to pick up the minor child. The daycare has asked Ms. Antar for court orders, but they have not received them. Ms. Antar became upset because she does not want Mr. Lodice picking up the minor child. On November 16th, 2022, DCF conducted a home visit at Mr. Lodice's residence. Mr. Lodice denied the allegations aside from leaving Angelina alone with his son. He reported that he has left Angelina alone with his son and states that he is mature enough and has a babysitting certificate. Mr. Lodice reports that if Angelina has been left with his son, it is just for a few hours. On December 2nd, 2022, a virtual home visit was conducted at Ms. Antar's residence in which the minor child was interviewed. She appeared healthy and alert with no visible marks or bruises. The minor child reported that things have been going well with her in her father's home and reported to feel safe. Additionally, she reported to feel safe at her mother's home. The case was closed as unsubstantiated for physical neglect against Mr. Lodice regarding Angelina and Mr. Lodice's other children. Family Services contacted DCF worker Yesenia Rodriguez as it relates to her most recent DCF involvement with this family. She reports that per her supervisor's directive, she is not allowed to discuss her involvement with this family because the case is closed, regardless of the court order and signed releases from both parents. On January 20th, 2023, Family Services received an additional 3 reports from the Department of Children and Families from the years prior. A family assessment response worker was assigned to the family on January 25th, 2021. The caller reported that he was called by Ms. Antar, who asked the police department to speak with him as the parents were having a custody dispute. It was noted that Ms. Antar is growing marijuana in her home. Mr. Lodice emailed the DCF worker 3 pictures to support his statement. A home visit was conducted with DCF and the police on January 26th, 2021. It is noted that DCF and the police did not observe any marijuana plants in the basement, but also confirmed that the photographs the father provided were taken in Ms. Antar's basement. It is noted that Ms. Antar's curtains and the painting of the basement were the same. Ms. Antar denied the allegations and noted that Mr. Lodice knows how to use Photoshop. It is reported that Ms. Antar provided documentation of a medical marijuana card. Angelina was interviewed by DCF on February 5th, 2021. It is noted that Angelina presented well, was laughing, was dressed appropriately, and didn't appear to be under any distress. There were no concerns reported for Angelina at a second interview conducted on February 18th, 2021. In the conclusion, it is noted that the DCF caseworker completed an SDM risk assessment, which resulted as moderate. A family assessment response worker was assigned to the family on May 15th, 2021. It was reported that Ms. Antar was passed out in her residence while Angelina was in the home with her. The caller reported to DCF that he could hear Angelina crying inside the home from the outside of Ms. Antar's door. Upon answering the door, the caller reported that Ms. Antar's speech was slurred, her teeth were purple from drinking wine, and she had an elevated mood. The caller reported that he observed marijuana plants on the table under a sun lamp in Ms. Antar's basement. Both parents contacted the police. The allegations were denied by Ms. Antar. DCF conducted a home visit on May 5th, 2021. Angelina was observed to be running around and jumping on the sofa. It is noted that Angelina was dressed and groomed appropriately. She did not present with any visible marks or bruises. It is reported that Angelina appeared happy and bonded to her mother. Additional home visits were conducted at Ms. Antar's residence on June 8th and June 22nd of 2021. No concerns for Angelina were reported. In the conclusion, it is noted that DCF caseworker completed an SDM risk assessment, which resulted in a moderate level of abuse or neglect. The last report received, dated March 30th, 2022, appears to include allegations that involve Ms. Antar's other child. Thus, Family Services does not have a release of information to report this information to the court, however wanted to document that it was received. On January 10th, 2023, Family Services received a letter from Yale Pressman, LPC, dated January 2nd, 2023. It is noted that Ms. Antar was a client in her care at Mindful Mediation from September of 2017 until October of 2019. Ms. Antar began treatment to work on issues related to depression and anxiety. At the time of intake, Ms. Antar was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. It is noted that Ms. Antar was compliant with all treatment recommendations and attended all scheduled appointments. At the time of treatment, Ms. Antar achieved various mental health goals, and her progress was noted to be commendable. Family Services spoke with Yale Child Study clinical receptionist Milagros Diaz on January 12, 2023. She reports that the minor child has an intake scheduled for January 23, 2023. After that intake, the staff will meet together and a counselor will be assigned. At that time, a treatment plan will be developed. Family Services made several attempts to contact Melissa Stewart, LP, a clinician of Ms. Antar, with no success. A letter was mailed to her on December 7th, 2022. Phone calls were placed December 14th, December 27th of 2022, and an email was sent December 14th, 2022. Family Services made several attempts to obtain information from Stephanie Janes, a clinician for both Mr. Lodice and Ms. Antar, with no success. A letter was mailed on December 7th, a voicemail was left December 14th and December 27th, with endless ringing and no voicemail opportunity. Ms. Janes contacted this writer on December 30th, 2022, and reported that her last name is incorrectly spelt on the release of information and therefore would require an updated release of information. Therefore, new releases were executed to both parents on December 30th, 2022. However, Mr. Lodice didn't provide myself with his release of information until January 12th, subsequent to several reminders. The updated release of information was resent to Ms. Janes on January 12th, in which she confirmed receipt. However, at this time, no information has been received from Ms. Janes. Family Services made several attempts to obtain information from Lisa Nichols, a clinician of Ms. Antar, with no success. A letter was mailed December 7th. On December 14th, Ms. Nichols confirmed receipt of Family Services' request for information. Family Services spoke with her again on January 17th, 2023. She indicated that she will submit information to Family Services by the end of the business day. However, at this time, no information has been received from Ms. Nichols. On March 27th, 2023, the court requested that Family Services obtain additional collateral information from the New Britain Police Department and the Department of Children and Families. Family Services spoke with Lorraine Plummer, DCF social worker, on March 27, 2023. She reports that while DCF closed an investigation with this family in November of 2022, a new report was called in by Ms. Antar on February 1st, 2023. In Ms. Antar's report, she expressed concerns relative to Mr. Lodice's supervision of Angelina. She specifically mentioned concerns about the interactions between Mr. Lodice's older sons and Angelina. At this time, while the investigation continues, Ms. Plummer reports that she and the department do not have any concerns for Angelina and do not have any concerns for Mr. Lodice and his parenting of Angelina. During an interview with DCF, no disclosures of abuse were made by Angelina, and she is described to be a happy child. It is noted that Angelina has participated in several forensic interviews as recently as March 3rd, 2023 via Yale Child Abuse Clinic with no findings. Additionally, Ms. Plummer has made contact with Angelina's daycare provider, Bunny Village, whom also denies any concerns for Angelina. The daycare mentioned that their only concern was the broken down communication between Ms. Antar and Mr. Lodice. Ms. Plummer indicates that she intends to recommend Angelina remain in therapy at Yale Child Study and that Ms. Antar and Mr. Lodice engage in mental health treatment. On April 3rd, 2023, Family Services spoke with Detective Lisa Steves from the New Britain Police Department. Detective Steves advised this writer that she has been an officer for 9 years and has been working sexual assault cases for approximately 3.5 years. It is reported that an investigation involving Ms. Antar and Mr. Lodice was assigned to her in October of 2022. It was reported to DCF by Ms. Antar that Angelina was rubbing stuffed animals on her vagina. A concern was raised that Mr. Lodice's son, from a different relationship, was touching Angelina. Angelina participated in a forensic interview on October 31st, 2022, in which no disclosures of sexual assault were made. Ms. Steves describes Angelina to have presented as adorable, running, happy, and hyper. That investigation was ultimately closed. In February of 2023, Ms. Steves was again assigned to a sexual assault matter involving Ms. Antar and Mr. Lodice regarding the same allegations from October of 2022. However, Ms. Steves explains that this time, Ms. Antar provided 6 videos as evidence to the department. Thus, Angelina participated in another forensic interview on March 3rd, 2023. During the interview, Angelina is described to be self-aware. Ms. Steves reports that in her opinion, Angelina was interviewed by one of the best child interviewers in the state, who has several years of experience. During this interview, the interviewer asked Angelina more direct and specific questions. She was asked to provide clarity about how Mr. Lodice's son touched her. This was facilitated by using an animatronic animal. Specific responses from Angelina included no disclosure to words like boobs, vagina, and butt. When asking Angelina to reenact how Mr. Lodice's son would touch her, she would straddle on the floor and show a ticklish-like behavior. The reenactment was similar to the acts reviewed in the videos provided to Ms. Steves. Immediately after Angelina's second forensic interview was conducted, Ms. Antar met with Ms. Steves. She is described to be rude, mad, irate, and attempted to explain the definition of sexual assault in the 4th degree to Detective Steves. While Angelina did not report any disclosures of sexual assault during her second forensic interview, Detective Steves continued the investigation by continuing to conduct familial interviews to include an interview with Mr. Lodice. In the meantime, Ms. Steves reports that Ms. Antar sent several emails, one of which includes 7,000 words. In this email, Ms. Antar called Detective Steves incompetent and negligent, and copied Detective Steves' chief and her retired chief. Ms. Steves reports her concern for Ms. Antar's mental health. Subsequently, a meeting was scheduled with Ms. Antar, Detective Steves, and Detective Steves' supervisor. Ms. Antar contacted Ms. Steves on that day and indicated that she was going to be late to the meeting. Ms. Steves made it known that she was leaving work early that day and suggested the meeting be rescheduled. Detective Steves reports that the conversation did not go well, and while she made several attempts to end the conversation politely, Ms. Steves ultimately terminated the phone call. On March 10th, 2023, Ms. Steves received an email with documentation of a flyer on Facebook in which Ms. Antar advised Detective Steves that Angelina was kidnapped by Mr. Lodice. Detective Steves reports that these allegations were ultimately not true. It is noted that Angelina was with Mr. Lodice from March 10th, 2023 through March 12th, 2023. On March 12th, 2023, Mr. Lodice took Angelina to church as previously agreed upon between the parents. On March 12th, 2023, Ms. Antar met with Detective Steves and her supervisor. At this time, the allegations of the alleged kidnapped were discussed. However, in that conversation, Ms. Antar reported that Mr. Lodice left Angelina unattended for 12 hours on March 11th, 2023. She reports that Angelina made a disclosure that Mr. Lodice's son put his penis in her vagina with clothes pulled down. Ms. Antar requested a third forensic interview be conducted. However, she made specific requests as to how the interview should be conducted. For example, she provided the name of a provider that she would want to conduct the interview. Thus, as a result of the new allegations, a meeting was held with a multidisciplinary team. This team includes Detective Steves, law enforcement personnel, prosecutors, interviewers, DCF, clinicians, etc. While an additional forensic interview was not confirmed by the multidisciplinary team yet, Detective Steves still scheduled the third forensic interview for a tentative date of March 22, 2023. That date was ultimately postponed due to a decision not yet being made by the multidisciplinary team. On March 22, 2023, Detective Steves met with Mr. Lodice. The new allegations presented by Ms. Antar were denied. He provided video footage taken from the inside of his home. It was determined that Angelina was left alone with Mr. Lodice's son for approximately 30 minutes when Mr. Lodice went to the grocery store. It is noted that while the timestamps on his video appear to be incorrect, Mr. Lodice also provided his phone GPS that confirmed he was out of his home for approximately 30 minutes. The video footage from inside the home also showed Angelina sleeping in her room and Mr. Lodice's son in a different room during the time Mr. Lodice was at the grocery store. Detective Steves reports that with this evidence, there is not a crime scene. While Family Services doesn't have a release of information as it relates to Mr. Lodice's son, it is noted that he was interviewed as a part of the investigation. In her investigation, a neighbor of Mr. Lodice and a friend of Ms. Antar drove by Mr. Lodice's house. The neighbor reported to Detective Steves that Mr. Lodice's truck was not in the driveway at 6:30 a.m. that morning. However, the video footage shows Mr. Lodice asleep during that time. In the interim, Detective Steves and her supervisor provided Ms. Antar with an official statement form. While not complete, Ms. Antar submitted a 57-page statement. Detective Steves reported that the statement included irrelevant information such as Mr. Lodice's salary. Detective Steves reports that she has a concern that if Angelina was interviewed for a third time and has a different disclosure, it will ruin Angelina's credibility. It was ultimately decided by the multidisciplinary team that it is not in Angelina's best interest to be re-interviewed for a third time. It was also noted that the videos provided by Ms. Antar were determined by the juvenile prosecutor to not be admissible in court. It is intended that the investigation will close upon Detective Steves finishing the paperwork organization of her investigation. Detective Steves reports that at this time, there is no probable cause for an arrest. That concludes my report, Your Honor.
Okay. Everyone else has received this information before, is that right?
Yes.
Oh, so can I let Ms. Baranowski go back to the other court?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So we have a number of post-judgment motions on the docket filed by both sides. I think that probably the initial motions were filed by the plaintiff, so I'd be inclined to treat the plaintiff like the moving party. So Attorney Cretella, how would you like to proceed?
My suggestion would be, Your Honor, almost to both sides wish to modify the parenting plan, and they wish to modify it in a completely opposite way. So maybe we treat them, we hear from, and I believe Mr. Lodice filed. Mr. Lodice is the plaintiff, right?
No, you are.
I thought he filed them initially, though. No.
No, I think
It was before. Okay.
Mom's the plaintiff in this action.
Gotcha. Okay. So.
And the moving party on most of the motions, but not all of them.
So maybe we hear from both sides, and then
That's
we can
fine.
argument. Maybe combine the two motions to modification, and then at the end just ask what they're, and maybe we can submit our proposal for a parenting plan.
That's fine. You can put
Right.
your client on first on all of the motions, and then I'll let him go forward on all of his motions. And
Well, why don't we do, in terms, I think the modification of the parenting plan would be the more pressing. I don't even know, in terms of, there's some contempt motions that we can hear at the end that may end up being moot. But also, in terms of child support, I still don't have all of the discovery from Mr. Lodice. There's one more issue. So maybe if we could do the, at least get the parenting plan.
Yeah, I'd like to keep the contempt motions going forward probably first, because I feel like a lot of those contempt motions are going to have relevance to our custody and agreements.
We're going to do everything all of them.
Okay.
Right? We'll get as far as, so, Ms. Antar, don't interrupt your lawyer while I'm trying to talk to him, okay? Don't do that. You'll have a chance to talk to him in a second. So I would prefer to hear from each side once on everything. And then if you're not ready, if you're still looking for some documents from Mr. Lodice about finances, fine. Okay. I'll certainly give you time to get that, or I'll issue some orders about that. But why don't you put on whatever evidence you have about all your motions?
Okay.
And we can do, they can each just testify once. And I won't limit anybody's examination by substance or.
Fair enough. Have they been, want to swear them at the same time? Or?
No, I think they're going to take the
Okay.
stand. So we can start with whoever you would like to start with.
What's again?
There's a verdict.
Nope.
There's a verdict.
Nope. She called you to the state. I mean, you don't get to decide. You get
Well,
stands.
you can go ahead. However, you can put on your case however you want to.
No, that's.
Is it okay if I just have 5 minutes just to...
No,
Just get rubber and have
we're now.
Okay.
Come on up.
Just go on.
Leave your notes with your lawyer. If you need them, he'll bring them to you.
You go there.
Okay.
Don't bring anything with you.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear, solemnly and sincerely affirm, as the case may be, that the evidence you shall give concerning this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, or upon penalty of perjury? So please say I do.
I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Theodora Antar, 856 Shadburg Drive, Orange, Connecticut, 06477.
You can have a seat. You start wherever you like.
You got it. May I sit for this, Sharon?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Antar, you have a child, correct? At least one.
Yes.
All right. And that child is, who is the father of that child that we're talking about today?
Matthew Lodice.
And what is your child's first name?
Angelina.
And when was she born?
May 21st, 2019.
And where does she live?
She lives 856 Shadburg Drive, Orange, Connecticut.
And who lives in that residence?
Myself and Angelina and my other daughter, Juliana.
And is that an apartment or is that a single-family house?
It's a single-family home.
And do you rent that or own it?
Own it.
And do you know how many square feet it is?
Approximately 1,400 or so.
Okay. How many bedrooms?
2.
And who stays in each bedroom?
I have a bedroom for myself, and the 2 girls share a bedroom.
So you said Angelina's 3. How old is your other daughter?
My other daughter is 8 and a half.
8 and a half. And how often do you have both of those of your children?
Right now, I have Angelina from Mondays when her father brings her back until Fridays, right now, between 9 and 12 when I typically bring her to the grandmother's house. And Juliana, I have every other weekend right now with Juliana.
So most of the time, they don't see each other.
They do. But when it's every other weekend with Juliana, Angelina's usually not there with us.
Right. Okay. And Angelina, what does she do during the day?
She was going to school before.
When you say school, she's 3. What do you mean by that?
She was in a daycare program that she was attending that also has a preschool class.
And where is that?
It was in Bethany.
And how long has she been going there?
She was attending there from end of June of 2022 until her last day was March 10th, 2023.
And how many hours a day is that? Did she go?
Typically, it would vary. They didn't have any set rules about that, so just pretty much depending on the needs, I would say 4, 5, sometimes 6, depending on the day.
Hours per day.
Depending, yes.
And you just indicated that she stopped going there on March 10th, correct?
Correct.
Why is that?
That was her last day, and after that, Matthew told the school that she wouldn't be coming anymore, and they terminated her.
Objection? No evidence?
All right, so
You're making false allegations?
she gets to say what she wants to say,
Okay.
and you can say what you want to say.
So she stopped going on March 10th.
Yes.
And it's your understanding it was because Mr. Lodice told the school or the daycare that she would not be attending anymore, correct?
I was told by the director of the school last week that Mr. Lodice informed her that Angelina would no longer be attending at the center. And so they then filled her spot.
And how much was this daycare?
The cost of the daycare was $157 times 2 per week was the costs.
So hang on.
$314.
Thank you. $314 a week?
Yes,
And how much was your responsibility? Was half of that?
correct,
And Mr. Lodice was responsible for half of that, correct?
correct.
And how often did you, well, withdraw? Did Mr. Lodice always fulfill his financial obligation to the daycare?
He never did.
And so how was that made up?
When I initially enrolled her in the school, I notified him that I would just be setting it up so that the school would make one account for him and one account for me for the financial aspect, and we would be both splitting that $314 in half, and we would each be billed the $157 weekly. And when Mr. Lodice refused to pay it, the school told me that if I didn't pay it, my daughter would be terminated for non-payment. So I was forced to incur several thousands of dollars in childcare that was for his half that he still never gave me a dollar of, despite sending certified letters.
All right. So at some point you came into court with Mr. Lodice and you came with an agreement on parenting plan, correct?
In April we did.
And that was for joint legal custody, correct?
Correct.
With primary residence with you, correct?
Primary residency was established in 2019 with me, correct?
So you have primary residence.
Yes.
And visitation schedule was determined at that point to be Mr. Lodice has Angelina on the weekends, correct?
Actually, no. It was initially that we would work it out on a week-by-week basis.
What is it now?
Right now, it's I'm supposed to bring her to her grandmother's house on Fridays between the hours of 9 and 12, and it says that Mr. Lodice is supposed to bring her to school in the morning on Monday, anytime consistent with the school, and also says bring her to Sunday school and back.
All right. So he has her on the weekends.
Yes.
And when was that? When was that ordered?
That was ordered on April 12th, 2022.
Okay. So just about a year ago.
Yes, exactly.
So during that year, some things have changed in your mind, correct?
Yes.
And you have filed motions to modify that, correct?
Yes.
And in a matter of fact, you wanted Mr. Lodice's visitation terminated at one point, correct?
I was concerned at one point and felt that. Then after that, I wanted every other weekend, and we submitted a proposed parenting plan as well.
All right. But what changed? Well, what's wrong? At some point, you became fearful for your daughter's safety, correct?
Yes.
And when was that?
That was starting to be after October of 2022.
And what were those fears?
Fears about sexual abuse.
At the hands of?
Her half-brother.
And there was an investigation done, right?
Yes.
And a forensic interview done.
Yes.
And a DCF investigation done, right?
Yes.
And they did not substantiate that, is that right?
Correct.
But you still had your suspicions, correct?
I did, but once there were no substantiations, I began feeling that I would just try to not be upset and let her go there and just let her, if she said something to me in the future, I would let them know like they said.
All right. Something did happen in the future, correct?
She did then make another disclosure to me in the future.
And when was that?
On February 1st was the first time since that other one was closed.
And so Subsequent to that second disclosure, another investigation was done, correct?
Correct.
And by DCF,
Yes.
New Britain Police Department,
Yes.
and again, they closed those?
I was told that the second ones will be closed.
All right. So I guess my question is, at this point, what was wrong? This past weekend, you dropped off Angelina at the grandmother's. Is that what you did?
Correct.
And tell me what happened. So you dropped her off on Friday afternoon at grandma's.
Yes,
And then
and
what happened?
she arrived at grandma's. I left her there. Matthew's truck was outside as well, and then I saw her at church on Sunday. I was told by Matthew that his mother would be bringing Angelina to drop her off at church instead of him. Okay. So I met his mother on Sunday morning outside the church, got Angelina, and then when church was over, I met his mother outside the church to give her back Angelina. And on Monday morning, since Angelina no longer has school, we reverted to the part of our agreement that says if there's no school, he'll bring her to my mother's house. So on Monday morning, Matthew met me at my mother's house and got Angelina.
Okay. So would you say that this past weekend was the most, for lack of a better word, uneventful weekend in terms of visitation that you've had in a long time?
Yes.
And when Angelina came home on Monday, did she make any disclosures that she had anything bad to say?
No, and she said she spent most of the time with Grandma,
Okay.
at Grandma's.
And going forward, I know we probably submitted a proposal. What is your desire right now in terms of visitation?
Ideally, I would like it to be where both of my children are on the same schedule. I do have another daughter who I have sole legal and physical custody of, and we recently modified her agreement. And when Matthew and I first did the every weekend schedule, that was to match my existing every weekend schedule with Juliana's father. But since we and him modified it, now it's every other with a few handful of days during the week. And I'd like to have something similar so my children can be together at the same time with me.
So it's your request now is no longer to have Mr. Lodice's visitation terminated. You're no longer requesting that, correct?
I feel that if I can ensure that Angelina will be safe and that she won't be left alone with babysitters who are not adequate, I want to make sure that she's safe, and that's my main concern.
And so your request now is, instead of leaving Angelina with Mr. Lodice every single weekend, it's every other weekend? Is that what you're requesting?
Yes, where on the weekend, on the weeks where he doesn't have her on the weekend, I would like it if he could have pick up for a few evenings and bring, have her maybe say Monday, Wednesday, Friday evening on the off weeks, which is the same schedule my other child has.
So you're not looking to decrease his visitation hours, it's just different ones, correct?
Yes.
And based on in my career, one of the most intensive investigations into a sexual assault, are you satisfied right now with the state of the investigation, that it's closed?
No, I'm not, because I have maybe 40 or 50 different videos of my daughter telling me about what was happening, and I feel that I do believe that something happened. I think the forensic interview and the process of it kind of limits a young child, and I am still concerned, but I know that the legal system is limited in what they can do, and I know that certain things are and aren't admissible, and there's nothing I can do to change that. So at this point, I just want to make sure she's in therapy, she's continuing to be supported in every way possible.
Okay. So all you're looking for is your child, Angelina, to be safe, correct?
Yes, and loved and supported.
And at this point, as long as there are some at least minimal safeguards, you don't have any problem with her going to see her dad?
Yes, I would like it if we could keep it where he's not to leave her alone with the other children. I think that's reasonable, and right of first refusal, we should be giving each other that right, and I would be glad to take her anytime if he has a work or personal conflict.
But a lot of times in these cases, we leave it up to, like, we set up a visitation schedule, but then leave other things up to the parties. We can't do that here, can we?
I would like it if we close loopholes and don't do that.
So if any parenting plan would have to account for basically every single holiday, every single vacation, correct?
Yes, and my goal would be to have one that would keep us out of court for forever, if possible.
I think you echo the sentiment of many. So right now, that's your request, is to every other weekend and nights during the week, correct?
Yes, I'd like it to match as closely as possible with the other one. It doesn't have to be exact, but I'd like to be as close as possible.
Have you ever hit your kid?
No,
Have you ever left her alone for extended periods of time?
never.
Have you ever mistreated her?
No.
Now, some people are going to look at what you've done over the past couple of years in court and maybe question the manner in which you go about things sometimes. You understand that, right?
Yes.
But let me ask you a question. Every single thing that you've done, has it been for the best interest of Angelina?
Yes.
In your mind. I mean, other people may not think that, right? But in your mind, in your motivation, every single thing you've done is for the best interest of your child, correct?
Yes.
So let's get over to finances for a second. When was the last time you received a child support payment?
I can't even remember the last time I received one.
Is it fair to say that Mr. Lodice owes you approximately 51 weeks of child support, that it's been just about a year since he's paid child support?
I would say he owes more than that at this point.
Okay. But at least that.
Yes, I would guess.
That current order is $120 a week?
Currently, yes, plus 50% of childcare, which he won't pay. And I have extreme balances he would not pay me.
Okay. So he has not paid child support in your mind over a year. And when is the last time he made a payment for child care? Has he ever?
Just to clarify with the child support, when he was when they placed a purge on him on June 1st, 2022, he was incarcerated and he was told to pay a $2,100 purge payment, which he paid immediately in less than 24 hours and was immediately taken out of prison. And that was the only payment I got, except for another payment which was intercepted from his taxes. Other than those two, I didn't receive any willful payments from him. And childcare, nothing was given to me to reimburse me since the end of 2021, and nothing was paid to the school since September of 2022.
So the only payment he made was because he was incarcerated, right?
Right, and he claimed he didn't have the money, but he magically got out in less than 24 hours.
And when the state took it from him, was the state or the federal government took it from him?
The state. It was magistrate court here.
Gotcha. No, I mean the other.
Oh, I think federal. I'm not sure.
Give me 1 second to look through whatever this is. I have no more questions.
Mr. Lodice, I have some questions. How about we do my questions first, okay?
Of course.
And then you can follow up. All right, so Ms. Antar, what's going on with your other daughter? Did you say that she's with you every other weekend?
Correct.
All right, what's her name again?
Juliana.
Juliana. And, but I thought you also told me that you had sole custody of that child.
Correct.
So what's going on? Are there like temporary orders or?
No, we reached an agreement. We just went that day to make a change, and we modified it. We both agreed that I would have, it would go from, instead of him having every weekend, it would now be every other weekend. And then the weeks he doesn't have her, he picks her up from school Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and brings her home at 8 p.m.
Okay, so maybe I misunderstood. Does your daughter sleeps most nights with you,
Yes.
but she's every other weekend with her dad?
Yes.
Okay, I thought you said it the other way around.
No.
Okay.
Yes.
So she's,
Understood as well.
so she sees her sister during the week.
Correct.
Okay.
and on Sundays at church.
Okay. I want to understand something that the Family Relations Counselor said. So who are you engaged in mental health treatment with now?
Her name is Lancia Blatchley, and it's from Healing Springs Wellness.
And what are her, like, what background does she have? Is she a PhD? Is she a licensed marriage family therapist?
I think she's a licensed marriage family therapist, I believe.
So she can't conduct these psychopharmacological evaluations that this other person recommended.
No, but I did since start on medication for ADHD with a different.
Who did you do that? Did you do that psychopharmacological evaluation?
Not in 2020 when I saw that woman.
Who did you do anything like that, like a comprehensive evaluation?
Not until I did it recently when we put me on medication.
So who did you do that with?
Her name is, I can actually provide you with the full name. It's in my phone, but I don't
Just
have.
do the best you can.
Oh my God, what's her name? I'm sorry, I said.
Is
I can give you it.
Is she your physician?
She's a like a psych. I don't know if she's a psychiatrist or what her actual. I think APRN, and so she did like an evaluation.
So
and
this is a nurse, not a doctor.
I'm not sure her exact credentials. I could let you know if I check in my phone.
Okay. How did you wind up talking to her?
I was actually referred by Lancia because I discussed ADHD difficulties, and I was saying I was considering going on meds. I had been on meds back 10 years ago and tried to do natural route for a while, and then I considered, let me see if these medication will help, and I feel it has helped significantly with a lot.
Is that provider, did you give the name of that provider to Anna Maria?
No, because I started with her after I gave them all the names, but I can give it to her.
Okay. Well, that's why I'm asking.
Yes.
Because I didn't hear that in her report. So that's something that's just started.
Yeah, I would say about a month and a half I started, and it's been a big help for me being back on it.
All right. Would you tell me about your schedule? Like during the week, like what your commitments are?
So right now, my commitments are school, which overlaps with some evenings, and I also have my work, which I do a lot of it from home. So a lot of times I'm with the kids at the house if there's no school. When
are you working and when are you in school?
Typically I'm in school Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Right now,
When to when?
right now it's from 6 to about 9. On Monday and Wednesday, it's from 6 to 9:40, and then on Tuesday, it's from 6:30 to 9:15. But that'll be ending soon, and will be summer vacation soon.
So you're in stores for this?
I'm in Hartford.
Oh, right. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, from 6 to 10, you're in Hartford.
Yeah, 6 to 9-ish or 10-ish, yes.
So who's watching the children when you're in Hartford?
Typically, my mother will do it for me and get them from their school and get them home, put them in bed, and wait for me to get back.
And what are you doing for work?
So I have like a business that's about being a notary, so I just do signings, which are flexible with when I can schedule them. And I also have another company that just makes newspapers, so I sell ads and talk to clients on the phone and stuff like that. So some of what I do is going out in the field. Some of what I do is working from home. The stuff in the field is usually appointments. And so
you're self-employed.
yes. And so being in school, I'm not really working as much as I was prior to that, but I try to pick up appointments and schedule as many as I can to still bring income.
Do you have a financial affidavit?
Yep.
All what's this?
Give me a minute, Your Honor, I'll find it.
All right, that's fine. I can wait till after the recess. Anna Maria from Family Relations said that DCF said there was a new report about your older child. Do you know what that's about?
Yes, I actually was asking that they make sure that she had a bed and things at her father's house when he first started getting that visitation time, and
So you called DCF.
to look into the conditions that she was having a bed and all of that, and it was just that type of case, I guess.
Okay. So that was initiated by you.
Yes.
And what happened with it?
They actually did find substantiations. Well, there was another time with physical abuse and violence.
Asking you about this. So you just
There was two different ones. So I don't know which one you're talking about.
this month, last month, March 2023.
To my knowledge, there hasn't been any ones for her since years ago. So I don't know if that's a misunderstanding from Family Relations, but the only DCF recent ones were regarding Angelina.
So Anna Maria, you heard Anna Maria say that DCF told her that there was DCF involvement about your oldest child in March of this year, so last month. Did you know anything about that?
To my understanding, from what Anna Maria told me, was that they gave her a report about, in March, they gave her that report about the child, but that it was sent to her in error, and that because it was given to her, she said that she still had to say it because she did see it.
So I'm asking you about it. How was DCF involved with your older child last month?
No.
Was the child involved with DCF and her father possibly?
No, nothing. Not since 2017.
So you don't know what that's about?
I believe she's referencing the one from 2017. She stated that DCF gave it to her as part of the record, and she said it was an error because they only asked for things regarding Angelina.
Okay. All right. So in terms of what you want the schedule to change to match the schedule you have with your older daughter. And is that it in terms of the schedule?
Well, there's also another thing is that right now it says that he drops her off at school. She doesn't have a school, and the other part is that it says Fridays, goes to the mother. Since that's been in effect since last summer, there's been multiple occasions where the mother was not there. No one showed up. No one answers the phone, and she's extremely unreliable. And I've had documentations of several police reports. I filed contempt motions every time and never.
Who are you talking about? His mother?
His mother, who's the drop-off person.
You're telling me what you want to change.
I'd like to change it so that it's not bringing to his mother's, and I'd like to make it so it addresses the fact that there's no longer a school. So something in the interim until we can get her signed up somewhere else. She has 1 year left until she starts kindergarten. So I'd like to address.
Doesn't she turn 4 in May?
Yes.
She's not going to go to kindergarten in September?
Next September, 2024, she will. Because you have to be 5.
So she's going to go to nursery school, maybe in May.
Yeah, I'm hopefully looking to try to get her in a daycare similar to what she was in before. Is that I never intended her to stop going there.
Okay. All right, you've answered all my questions. So let's take a recess, and then, Mr. Lodice, if you have questions, you can answer them after that. Ask them after that, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
We're in recess.
Oh, God.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. All right, Ms. Antar, you can come back up and stand. Mr. Lodice, if you have questions, they need to be related to the proceedings in front of me and, appropriate, okay?
Of course.
All right.
Your Honor, if I just, Ms. Antar, want me to ask, there's a young man here who wanted to give some sort of character testimony. Is that something that maybe, and he has to leave pretty soon, maybe I could just have him write something down and maybe submit it to the court later?
As long as there's no objection.
I mean, I object to, one, he wasn't properly subpoenaed as a witness, and two, what's the relevance to my relationship and Ms. Antar's relationship with our daughter?
Well, he doesn't have to be subpoenaed. And the last part, I don't know. Maybe he'll give me the statement and I won't think that it's relevant at all. But
I'll give it to Mr. Lodice before I submit it to the court.
all right, that's fine. You'll see it first.
I'm going to read you, and then I'm going to give you my card. You can email me. Please, yeah. and I will give it its due attention. I don't have, I'll make sure you get my email.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
All right, now I apologize for
All
interrupting.
right, no, of course. All right, so.
May I sit while I do this?
Yes, you can start.
Ms. Antar, has Dominic ever resided with you while being in my custody when we were living together?
No.
Well, I'm going to object to the form of the question.
Who's Dominic?
My oldest son, the one she's making all the allegations about?
Okay, well, she answered the question.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to refer to myself in the third person for the sake of the court.
No, don't do that.
Don't do that, it's easier if I say me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
How would
I'll
you
never be
say,
able to follow it if you do it that way.
how would you say your relationship is with Dominic?
I don't have a relationship with Dominic.
Have you ever been contacted by the Southington Police Department regarding Dominic in your interactions with him?
Not that I recall.
Not that you recall? So you don't recall sending Dominic messages and then a police report being made by Monica Perez about the messages and you harassing Dominic?
I'm going to object to a bunch of stuff there.
All right, so when was all that?
This was back in August of 2021.
So I don't think that she is any longer pursuing these claims that your son shouldn't be around your daughter. So if she's not pursuing those claims anymore, I don't necessarily have to hear evidence about them. So is that what this is about?
Well, she said it earlier that she's uncomfortable with letting Angelina be with me and be around my children for babysitting purposes. Like when I work at night, if I have to get a second job, which I do to catch up with child support, I only have Dominic who can babysit. I can't afford a babysitter. So for her to make,
Right. Well, is there going to be a request the child's not live with Dominic?
Yeah, I think that is the request.
Okay, well then he can ask.
Yep.
She can
I
ask
understand.
those questions. All right, you can answer the question.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
That may be a question that the court may ask of Ms. Antar, just to make sure that we're on the same page.
have you ever text messaged Dominic directly?
No.
You've never text messaged Dominic directly?
Not unless you told me to.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd like to present some evidence to the court. These
Well,
are.
she's got to identify them
Okay.
first, or you
Can I
can
see
wait.
it?
till
I
you-
got to give it to him, right?
Can I see it?
You have to show them a
Do you have an extra copy? Or?
I do, of course.
Okay.
I can.
All right. So what are these supposed to be?
These are text messages between Miss Antar and my son when he was the age of 13.
So
this
that
would be
was
back in-
3 years ago.
3 years ago. So yeah, 2020 was the date that this happened.
I don't know the relevance of
I
3
don't
years
either.
ago. I would object as to relevance.
Well, if your client doesn't want the child with the older brother, I guess he's got the right to ask her about it.
Okay.
So, all right. So show those to the witness and just tell me, ma'am, are those what he says they are?
No, this is not my number. It doesn't show any phone number. This looks like just something.
Read the messages and tell me if they're messages between you and Dominic.
They're not, because I have an iPhone and my messages don't look like this. And I've never written these.
Yes or no?
You haven't
No.
even looked at them.
I am. They're not.
So you're claiming under oath that you did not send Dominic these messages?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. So those can be marked for ID. They won't come into evidence because they haven't been properly identified. They can go to the clerk for ID only.
Prior to the allegations made about Dominic in October of sexual abuse, have you made any other concerns about Dominic watching Angelina?
Yes.
And what were those concerns?
I was concerned because Dominic is diagnosed with oppositional behavioral disorder as well as ADHD, both of which to a very extreme, severe extent per your ex-wife's court filings regarding him. He's also on several different medications and has behavioral issues. He's failing out of school, And he's had issues since you and I were together that I've seen with myself. And I felt that him being a 16-year-old boy is not a proper babysitter, especially when we have the right of first refusal, where I told you so many times I will take her if you need to work. Anytime you need to work, I will take her.
Okay. How do you know that Dominic has these 2 diagnoses you just gave to the court?
I got it from official documents that were filed by Monica Perez in New Britain Superior Court in your divorce case.
And then it said that Dominic had ADHD, which he does. What was the other one you said he has?
Oppositional behavioral disorder.
Okay, and what makes you feel that he's unfit to be a babysitter regarding that?
He doesn't have a car. He doesn't have a license. He does not have a babysitting certificate. He doesn't have CPR certifications. He doesn't know the child's pediatrician or any of those things.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd like to present this evidence to the court. This is Dominic's babysitting certificate.
No objection.
All right, well, I can go with the clerk's and exhibit.
So upon making... I'm sorry. So after making a bunch of complaints about you don't want Dominic watching Angelina and nothing was being done, did you, is that when the alleged allegations were made, was after that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the...
Object to the formal question.
Yeah, I worded that wrong. I apologize, Your Honor. The allegations, the sexual allegations that you were made against Dominic, was it after the complaints you were making about Dominic babysitting?
I've been making complaints to you for years that I did not think Dominic is an adequate babysitter for our daughter. I think that she should be with someone who's over 18, somebody who's actually has experience with young children, or with me if I'm available, like I always am on the weekend.
And how many DCF reports have you made against Dominic?
I have not made any DCF reports against Dominic. I called DCF and reported what our daughter stated was happening. And when our daughter stated something, I did my due diligence as her mother and reported it.
How many times were those reports made?
There was one report made in October and one report again in February.
And then one in November prior, correct?
No.
Or there was 2 in February, excuse me. Wasn't there 2 in this year, 2023?
That's incorrect.
So you didn't make a third allegation once the second one was going to be closed? Upon March 10th saying that
Can I
Dominic
object to that question?
You can't object to anything.
So on March 10th, you didn't make an allegation that Dominic this happened to Angelina again in my care?
Our daughter stated to me on March 12th that she was sexually assaulted by Dominic while she was left alone with him on March 10th while you were at work and took Salvatore with you.
So that was the third report made?
I did not make any report to DCF about that.
But that was the third police report we'll say then,
No.
about it.
I disagree with your statement, so no.
Okay. What was the outcomes of all the reports?
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
What was the outcome of the DCF reports and investigations along with the police reports and investigations? Was it found to be true?
DCF substantiated neglect regarding you for leaving your 2 sons alone.
No, that's not what I'm asking. We're asking about the DCF reports about the sexual allegations against Dominic.
I'm sorry, please repeat the question.
I don't need her to answer this because Anna Maria already told me they were not substantiated. The New Britain Department, the Police Department is closing their cases.
I'll go back, touch on some other things that she brought up. You said that I never paid the daycare.
No, I did not say that.
Okay. You didn't say that I didn't make any payments to the daycare a few minutes ago?
I did not say that.
Oh, well, maybe I misunderstood you. Have I made payments to the daycare?
You made a few payments.
Okay. Now, in our court order, what is my financial responsibility as far as the daycare payments?
50%.
It's supposed to be reimbursed to you, correct?
It states father is to pay 50% of all child care and medical. And that's from November 7th of 2019 when it was first ordered that we'd have joint custody.
Just give me 1 second. Let's pull up the agreement.
The court has this, right?
The court has the agreement, correct?
Of course I haven't.
I believe the verbiage in the agreement says that father will reimburse mother for 50% of daycare expenses, not pay the daycare directly.
All right, what's your question?
Okay, so Ms. Antar, were you receiving care for kids through the daycare?
The daycare doesn't provide care for
Were
kids.
you
Care for Kids is a
receiving
subsidy
care for kids
program.
for the daycare?
I have received care for kids in the past, yes.
Okay, at the last daycare that Angelina was at, the one you alleged that I wasn't making any payments to, were you receiving care for kids for Bunny Village Learning Center?
We split the account in half, and I told Bunny Village that I would be applying for care for kids for my portion, and I applied for just my portion that I was being billed of the $157 per week for my half.
And how much would the care for kids give you for that?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was based on my income and household income.
Roughly, what did your daycare expense on your half come down to at that point?
I'm sorry, what are you asking?
What was your weekly daycare expense after care for kids was applied?
Well, it depended with when you're asking, because then
Answer the question.
It
I
was-
want to be here all day.
it was one amount and then it went up.
Okay,
So,
well,
What
tell
was
me
the
what,
two
tell
amounts?
me what
It
the
was-
one amount was and when, and then tell me when it went up.
yes, it was first, it was about, I believe, I want to say $52 or so per week. And then it went up about in, I want to say, February, after they did a renewal. And based on her age, they gave less money. And then at that point, it said that it was going to be, I think, like a little bit more than that. And then I actually asked Care for Kids to reassess it because I was getting no money from you, and the school was getting no money from you. So I asked to put a whole
Listen
amount.
to me.
Yes.
I'm not going to let you testify in a narrative. Look at me.
Okay.
I ask you a question, you answer.
Okay.
So here's the question. What did you get for Care for Kids? When did it change? To how much?
Okay. It was $52 when it started that I was paying, and then after that it changed, and it was, I want to say, a little bit higher than that. I don't remember the number. And then it changed again after we added the full payment amount to, instead of just only billing for my half. And at that point, they said that it was going to be about, I believe, $160 a week.
And that's what Care for Kids contributed.
That's the difference after Care for Kids.
Okay. So that's what you paid after Care for Kids, $160.
That was the most recent, yes.
Okay. And how long was it $160?
It was only $160 since the beginning of March, and then she only went until the 10th.
So,
Hold on.
sorry.
What was it before that?
Before that, it was $52, I believe.
That's what you paid
That's what I was paying.
for one half. So you got $100 a week in Care for Kids, or $105 a week in Care for Kids costs.
Something like that, yes.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, so what you're saying is the total daycare expenses, as the last one, was $160 for total daycare between both parents as a whole, after Care for Kids, correct?
No, that's what it would have started being in March, but she only attended for 10 days and then was terminated after you took her out without consulting me first.
Okay, prior to that, it was $52 was your half, but then it was still another $157 due that was supposed to be my half, correct?
Correct.
For a total of $209.
Correct, and it would have been $315 without the portion of mine, and the school told you could get Care for Kids yourself if you were eligible.
So if Care for Kids is contributing $100 to the daycare and the total amount is $209, and the current agreement says that father's to reimburse mother for 50%, why is father having to pay $157 and not $104.5?
That's not what the current agreement says, and I know for a fact the agreement that was established on November 7th, 2019, which was written by hand, states father will pay 50% of all daycare and medical. It says all child care and medical.
So 50% of the daycare expense would be $104, $104.50.
I will decide
Okay.
how the Care for Kids gets applied.
Okay.
And I'll tell you right now that I'm going to apply in this case the rule I apply in every case, which is that the parents share the costs after Care for Kids. So it's unfortunate that it wasn't applied for equally, but that's how it's going to be. So we don't need to talk about that anymore.
Okay. Now, we've been back to this court a few times to adjust the agreement, correct?
We've only been back one time to change it. The other time we changed it, we did an out of court. We both signed it and submitted it without a court appearance.
Okay. And how well would you say you followed this agreement?
Which agreement?
Objection.
What's the objection?
I'm not sure her answer to this question will be helpful to me.
Well, isn't part of what are we going over is the contempt motions?
Yes, but what she thinks about how she followed the
Okay.
motions, the orders, is not going to be
And it
helpful
will
to
be
me.
a long answer.
Okay. So, Ms. Antar, I filed contempt motions regarding October 8th that you never showed up to drop off Angelina at the paternal grandmother's house. Is this true?
Is it true that you filed a
Is
contempt
it-
motion?
Did you drop off the child at paternal grandmother's house on 10/7/22?
I would have to look at my phone to verify that. I don't have it memorized of every single thing off the top of my head.
Okay. Could we give her a minute to look at her phone to verify then, Your Honor?
Okay, what's the question?
I'm asking if she dropped Angelina off to my mother's house on 10/7/22, which is my first line of the contempt motion I filed against her.
10/7/22.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you want to give your client her phone?
Your Honor, I think, if I may, I will give her the phone, but I think we can stipulate to the fact that there were numerous occasions that Ms. Antar did not drop her child. I think it was established in the last virtual hearing,
Okay.
and so to go through every single date might be repetitive.
All right, well, maybe we can skip to the why.
Okay. Why do you feel it was necessary to keep the father from said child?
I'm sorry, can you please repeat your question?
Why do you feel it was necessary to keep Angelina from the father?
I don't understand your question.
Well, you weren't bringing Angelina to the mother's house to be dropped off to the Monday as on the agreement. Why do you think it was necessary to no longer let the father see the child anymore?
Could you be more specific?
Ms. Antar,
I just don't understand.
listen to me.
Sure.
I'm not going to do this with you.
I'm sorry.
You were doing so well.
Sorry.
So there were a bunch of dates. You told me already on another hearing. There were a bunch of dates where you didn't bring the child to his mom's house. Tell me why.
Okay, if you're referring to the most recent time when I did not bring her, as I stated to you in our family wizard on February 3rd, 2023, I told you that because Angelina made disclosures of sexual abuse and there was concerns that after speaking with DCF and the police that everyone was in agreement that it would be in her best interest not to have these weekend unsupervised visitations until further notice, until we got a conclusion for those DCF and police investigations, which I told you several times about. That's the reason why.
Okay. During February, while you were not bringing Angelina to the father, did you continue the phone calls with the father?
Yes.
So you were letting the father talk to Angelina?
Yes.
Did you at any point stop the communication between Angelina and father?
Yes.
Okay.
Just if I might, we're going back and forth between first person and third person. Can we stick with one?
Sorry. Did you at any point stop letting Angelina talk to me?
Yes.
Okay. And for how long did that continue?
It was maybe a week or two, but it was because you put Dominic on the phone and the police officer stated that that's not recommended when he's under
Objection,
active
hearsay.
investigation.
You can't object to your own question.
She's saying the police officer said something. No, that's not answering the question.
I asked her why.
Okay.
Doesn't make it true. She's just telling why she
Okay.
did it. So that's her belief that that's what the police
Okay.
department said.
Does 7 weeks sound a little more accurate that you didn't let the father talk to the daughter of the 9 weeks that he didn't see her?
Absolutely not. And you did not see her for 9 weeks.
Okay, a couple more questions for you. Where's that paper? Since you and myself have lived separately, have there been any other times that you either kept Angelina from father or didn't return Angelina to father prior to these sexual allegations against Dominic? So prior to October of 22, we'll say?
No.
Okay. In March of 2021, was there any times you refused to take Angelina back, saying that you don't want to take her back, that I can just keep her?
No, in fact, I was begging for you to give her back to me, and you were refusing to.
Okay. Now, I have some evidence here I'd like to present to the court. These are copies of text messages ranging different days.
All right, well, they're text messages between who and who?
From Miss Antar and myself.
So it would be easier,
Or from
Mr.
the
Lodice, if they just came into evidence when you testify, right? Wouldn't that be easier?
Maybe. It's up to you. I can do it either way.
What's the time frame of your text message?
There's one from 8/2/2021, 11/15/21, January 2nd, January 3rd, 2022, January 10th, 2022, and then there's also police reports throughout all of...
Take out the police reports. Just do the text messages. I got to do one thing at a time.
Okay.
So let's just do the text messages.
Okay.
Give those to Ms. Antar.
I would object, Your Honor, first of all, on the fact that one of the things is that they are dated by Mr. Lodice's handwriting. So
it's hard to know if the dates are right. All right. Well, your client can tell me. I'm sure she might recognize them. So take a look at those. See if those are, in fact, text messages between the two of you.
And there's a lot of, while she's looking at, there's a lot of things in here that are not relevant that probably need to be redacted.
No, none of these are legitimate. They're not. They don't show dates. They don't show
Ms.
the number.
Antar, that's not what I asked you. I asked you if they're the text messages between the two of you.
No.
They're not the text messages.
I want to remind Miss
between the two
Antar
of
she's
you?
under oath.
Stop it.
I don't see any dates here, so I don't believe that these are.
That's not what I asked you. I asked you if those are the exchanges between you and Mr. Lodice. Do you recognize them or not?
I don't recognize any of these, honestly.
Okay, fine. They can be marked for ID. You can look at them later, sir.
I would like to reiterate that just the first two pages are the only ones without dates on them. If you look at this, the next two stapled ones, they have dates.
When you I told you it would be easier if you did it. When you testify, you can put in your text messages. You're the other half. You can
Okay.
tell me what they are.
Okay.
All right, what's next? Police reports?
All right. Next, I also have police reports dating March 5th, 2022, March 25th, 2022. Oh, there was more messages on the back. I apologize.
All right, do you have an objection to those?
The police reports?
Yeah.
Yes, they are hearsay.
All right, that objection is sustained. They can be marked for ID. Do you have anything else?
I have some more questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Ms. Antar, did you make a Facebook post labeled as an Amber Alert for that the father kidnapped your daughter?
No.
You already objected hearsay. Okay.
Is it
I'd like to
Facebook?
present evidence. This is a copy of the Facebook post that Ms. Antar posted.
She can look at it.
And Ms. Antar did state on, I believe she stated on record earlier that she made a report,
Now he's testifying objection.
Okay, hold on. Is that your Facebook post?
No, it's not. I never posted that. It's not from me, and it doesn't show my name either.
the bottom right corner, I believe, says your name, Ms. Antar. That's not your name?
You show a post here that is from somebody else that you cropped out who posted.
Does the bottom right corner
We're
say
losing
your...
control.
Ms. Antar, have you seen that before?
I've not seen this, no.
You haven't seen that image in that post before?
This is an image of my daughter that I took, and this is a screenshot of what appears to be a post, but I cannot verify that because it doesn't show the name. It
Listen
doesn't.
to me.
Yes.
I asked you if you saw it before.
No.
You haven't seen that post before?
Not this post.
Somebody posted that about, did you see something like it?
Not like this, but here shows my name.
Listen to me.
May I voir dire the witness briefly?
Oh, sorry.
So, Ms. Antar, were you ever aware that a post was made about an Amber Alert for your daughter?
No, never aware of that.
Never aware?
No.
So this is the first time you've seen anything like this?
Yes.
And how does your name get down at the bottom?
That part where it's white, where it says my name, is what I posted, which doesn't say anything about the child's name. It doesn't say anything about Amber Alert, and it's based on the information I received from 911 that stated they would call me back with an update and that they were doing a be on the lookout.
So I'm going to, in behalf of, I'm not going to object to this. This could come in.
Listen, she hasn't identified it,
Okay.
and I won't admit it. It can be marked for ID. But I would just like to point out that Family Relations told me that the police department followed up, received from your client a Facebook post that sounds a lot like this one. And of the myriad of factors that I have to consider in the custody statute, certainly people's ability to own up to their behavior and work with each other and tell each other the truth about what's going on and perceive what's going on about their child rationally is on the list. So that's fine. She says she's never seen it before. It
And
can
I'd
be
like-
marked for ID, and you can ask another question.
And may I also...
No.
Hang on. If you want to re-ask that question, maybe once you re-ask the question. Facebook post.
Did you make that Facebook post?
I did not. I'm not sure who made this Facebook post. The only thing that here that I posted was where it says my name, and it just only says one sentence, which does not say the child's name, doesn't say Amber Alert, doesn't say anything like that, and was based on information I was given by the State Police 911 on that day.
And which information was that?
So in terms of this being admitted, Your Honor, I think the court can determine what is evidence and what is not. It's not you're not a jury. I would say that the Ms. Antar does admit that bottom portion of it was admittedly written by her, and I would ask that part to be no objection to that being admitted to evidence, and the other part that while it being on the same page, the court would ignore it.
Okay, that's fine. It can be marked and admitted.
And you said that you made this, what was the reason that this was done? Based on the...
I spoke to 911, and they stated that they would be trying to intercept your vehicle to try to get the child back after learning that the Yale Child Advocacy Center on March 3rd, after the forensic interview, documented that they have the documentation stating no unsupervised contact with Dominic. That's the recommendation. And under my knowledge that from what Detective Steve stated to me was that you told her you agreed it was in the best interest of Angelina to remain with me until further notice. You're also ordered by a criminal order of protection. That's
You've answered the question.
okay.
Thank you. So you made this post.
Objection.
Okay, sorry.
Foundation.
Sorry, you're right. What you just claimed the reason you made all this, do you happen to know what day of the week that was?
Objection, foundation still.
I'm trying to show that the day she made this post was the day that it was my parenting time with her.
Listen, you can testify to that. You don't have to try and get her to tell me that. You
Okay.
can tell me that.
Okay. Ms. Antar, have you ever filed any emergency ex parte orders with the court?
Yes.
How many emergency ex parte orders would you say you filed?
I don't know.
Does 4 sound accurate?
I'm not sure.
I object as to relevance.
She applied for
So
emergency
it's-
custody. Sorry.
So overruled, the ability of the parties to work out disputes is relevant to the court.
Were any of those ex parte orders granted for emergency custody of Angelina?
Yes, the last one was, and it was told not to have Dominic alone with the child. It was granted in part.
But none of the other 3 were not.
I'm not sure which 3 you're referring to without seeing in front of me, but
3 regarding Angelina.
I'm not sure. I believe there are some that never got heard yet.
You believe there's some ex parte orders that still haven't been heard?
I'm not sure. I know many motions were filed since we were last
We are
here.
hearing all pending motions today, all of them.
I do have evidence and things I'd like to be able to show as well, but I just like my concern is really for Angelina's best interest.
Okay. Now, do you think keeping Angelina from me is in her best interest?
I'd object.
She can answer that.
No.
But yet you still chose to keep her from me throughout the months of October and then again in January, February, and until the middle of March this year.
Both times under the advisement of DCF and the police, who felt it was best for the child to remain not going to those visits until the conclusion of the investigations. I did, but once the investigations were closed or I was told otherwise, I immediately resumed allowing her to go. And it was only out of concern for our daughter's safety, which I'm surprised you're not concerned over.
How many daycares has Angelina been part of since Angelina's been going to daycare, we'll say?
I would say maybe 3 or 4.
So she's been to 4 different daycares so far, you would say?
She was at the Woodbridge Child Center from the age of 2 months until about, I would say, January of 2021.
And what happened with the Woodbridge Child Center?
What happened was that you were having a relationship with an underage teacher who was in another relationship, and you were allowing that individual to take Angelina home outside of the parameters of the school's guidelines, which state only certain people can take the child home, and it was a safety concern. And the fact that there was no recourse for that, I felt that it was not a good situation for our child.
So Ms. Antar, you got to just answer the question. How did your child leave that program? Did you take her out of the program?
The school said to me that
Listen to me. Who terminated the child's relationship with the school?
the school did. The school did because they said that if we, they wanted a meeting in person, not on Zoom, or they said they wanted a meeting on Zoom or in person, and I said I wanted to talk about it via email so we could have it in writing for documentation, and they said it had to be in person, and they said if I didn't get back to them by a certain date that they would make a decision, and then they made a decision saying they were just going to terminate her because we hadn't decided about a meeting. And I can answer the rest of his question about the daycares as well, if it's relevant.
Wait for the next question.
Okay.
Sorry. After that, that Angelina was removed from that daycare, did you make a police report against the daycare?
I documented that the daycare was,
I asked if you made a police report.
I made a documentation regarding the incident.
So, yes, you made a police report?
I wrote a report that was a documentation of the event with the police.
Yeah, that's a yes or no question. I asked her if she made a police report.
Sounds like yes.
Okay. What did you allege in that police report?
I just wrote about what happened. I don't have a report. I don't understand why you're asking some things from like 3 years ago.
Yeah, and I have the copies of the police reports right here that she made against the daycare once Angelina was removed.
What's the name of that daycare?
Woodbridge Child Center.
How long was the child there for?
While I would say at least a year.
When did you say she was there?
She started at about 2 months, so that would have been in like July or August of 2019, and then she finished in like December of 2020 was her last day. So I guess it was like a little over a year.
Okay. All right, let's move on. Is there another daycare provider after that?
Well, I want to point out that Miss Antar made another false report against that daycare also.
Objection.
So you don't get to tell me stuff in this context, you just get to ask questions.
I just want to point out that that I have a police report here of Miss Antar making.
What did I just say? You don't get to tell me things when you're asking her questions.
Okay.
So the police reports are full of hearsay, and there's nobody here to authenticate them, so they don't come into evidence. But she said she said she contacted the police, so she told you that.
What was the nature of the allegations of the police report?
I don't remember what I wrote in a police report 3+ years ago
Just a general.
regarding the incident with what happened with the daycare allowing the individual that was taking the child without notifying the parents and violating the school's policies.
Did you claim that the daycare was abusing Angelina?
No.
So you never made any claims or filed any police reports or any sworn statements?
I object to the relevance there.
Let's move on to the next thing.
Okay. Ms. Antar, have you ever filed any protective orders through civil court against me?
Yes, and it's my legal right to do so.
And how many protective orders have you filed against me?
Several, because I've felt threatened by you several times.
So 4 sounds like an accurate number?
I'm not sure.
Okay. And has any of those 4 civil restraining orders, have any of those 4 civil restraining orders been applied? Have they been set?
There have been
Or have they
at
been
least
thrown
2 that were granted on an ex parte basis.
They granted them ex parte before a hearing, correct?
Yes.
But once the hearings were done, were any of those found to be needed to be upheld?
I'm not sure what you're asking me.
Did they place any of the protective orders on me upon the hearings?
Yes, you currently have a protective order on
No,
you.
that's not what we're asking. We're asking of those 4 civil protective orders that you applied for through the court, were any of those applied?
Not on a permanent basis.
So after the hearings, were any of those applied, yes or no?
No.
Thank you. Did you ever file to move this case to a different courthouse?
Objection. Relevance.
There's a motion to transfer the file, I can see it.
I think it was withdrawn.
Yes.
Yeah, he withdrew.
What are the odds I could get another JD to take this case? I think they're pretty low.
Can I still ask about that motion and reasons for filing?
You can ask her.
What was your reason for filing that motion?
Objection. Relevance.
She can answer it. I have no idea why she might want to do that. Well, I guess I could come up with some. So why'd you file that, Ms. Antar?
I listed the reasons in the motion, which you should be able to see. However, if from what I recall regarding the distance and some of the other things that are a nuisance in a way, whereas in the other court, which is closer to my home and actually the proper court I should have filed for the jurisdiction, I felt that it was going to be cheaper with parking, easier for me. Sometimes the garage is costing me so much money and downtown is hard to park, and it's things like that that I thought would be better.
Do you believe that any of your reasons for filing to move the courthouse was because you weren't getting the results you wanted every time you filed the motion?
No.
Okay. Did you also file to recuse a judge in this court?
It
Objection. That motion has been withdrawn. I think it was my first order of business.
It doesn't matter. It's fine. If the motions were withdrawn, it doesn't matter.
That was a motion that was
No
withdrawn.
question pending.
Okay.
So I sustain the objection, so
Okay.
you don't have to answer the question.
Ms. Antar, How many times would you say you've called the cops on me?
I've needed to use the police to facilitate with some of our exchanges and make reports on different occasions.
Outside of direct exchanges, about how many police reports, what times have you called the cops between welfare checks, making reports against me, stuff like that?
I would say probably equal to the same amount of times you've called for the same reasons.
Would you say that 47 times sounds accurate?
I would say no if you're asking me off the top of my head. That does not sound accurate to me, but whatever the number is consistent with what you've done, including Monday when you had the police at my mother's
just answer
house.
the question, please.
I did.
Thank you. Were you ever arrested in any of the times when you called the cops?
No, I wasn't.
You were not arrested by New Haven police outside this courthouse in the parking garage?
I was not.
You were not arrested?
I was not arrested outside of this courthouse. No, I was not.
How about in the parking garage?
What's that?
Not in the parking garage either.
All right, were you arrested when you left the courthouse?
No.
I want to remind her she's under oath.
This
is perjury.
I was served on a warrant weeks later that I turned myself in. So the question is, was I arrested outside a courthouse? No, I was not. I was told by that officer that no one was getting arrested.
Were you arrested in regards to one of the calls you made against me at any point?
There was a breach of peace that ended up getting
It's
dismissed.
yes or no question. Were you arrested?
I was told that I could answer that I wasn't arrested since the charges were dismissed.
Okay.
I wasn't asking about the charges being stuck. I was just asking about the arrest.
Listen. Anytime anybody gets issued a summons or arrested on the spot for a matter relating to a case before the court, in family court, the presiding judge gets notified. So the court marshal, I think the chief, did tell me that Ms. Antar was issued a summons for her arrest after a court date in this court. I don't know who she was before that day or what circumstances led to that, and I don't know if it turned out to be true, but I do know that the chief told me as the PJ that Ms. Antar was issued a summons for something that happened with Mr. Lodice on a day that they were in this courthouse. I think they were before Judge Price Portland on that day, but I really am not sure. So I have a little extrajudicial information about that. I don't know what happened after that, or if it was even true.
What were the nature of those charges, Ms. Antar?
I'm not sure how it dropped charges. Those are nothing but allegations until you get convicted. So I'm not sure why you're asking me about
What were the
something that was
charges on the
thrown out
summons?
in court for no substance.
What were the charges on the summons?
I'm sorry, what summons?
The arrest summons, the arrest warrant. What were the charges you were charged with? Even though it may have been thrown out, what were the charges?
It was a breach piece.
And was there another charge?
I don't remember.
Would this filing a false report sound familiar?
It could be, but like I said, the charges were dropped for no proof and no actual crime being committed. And
Ms. Antar,
people
if
are
you just answer the
innocent
question
until proven
directly,
guilty.
please.
Okay. I am getting ready to end this hearing because, Ms. Antar, you have to just answer the question, right? Yes, no, I don't know, I don't remember. You give a date, you give a time. I'm not going to let you testify in a narrative on cross-examination. That's not going to happen. So I want you to knock it off, okay? And Mr. Lodice, you can't be talking while she's talking because I can't listen to you at the same time. If you're both talking, I can't hear either one of you. So everybody's got to slow down.
I apologize. I'd like to play something for the court, if that's okay with the court. I made copies on USBs for both the court and for her lawyer.
Well, what is it?
It's a recording between me, Ms. Antar, and Angelina when we were together once.
Okay. And when was that?
This was, it should have the date on it, October 29th, 2020.
Is there going to be an objection to that?
Yes.
All right. What's the objection?
In civil court, it's a little different than criminal, but I believe that don't both parties need to know they're being recorded?
So did everybody know they were being
They
recorded?
did.
Mr. Lodice?
So I think we may have voir dire the witness, or he make an offer of proof before.
Well, you haven't heard it yet, so why don't we do this? You keep the copy.
Yep.
We're obviously not going to finish before 5 today, so you'll have a chance to listen to it, and then you can offer it again, and if there's any objections, I'll hear you out.
He's going to play it.
Oh, do you-
I was told, I thought you said you had to hear it first.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Attorney Cretella has the hearing.
Oh, I apologize, Your Honor. I thought I meant
I
hearing
did say
before.
that, but that's not what I meant. Attorney Cretella has the hearing.
That's
So
what you
you
meant.
can offer it again in the future. not
Okay.
today. Mr. Lodice, all the evidence you want to offer should go to Mr. Cretella in advance.
Yep.
So
Thank you, Your
at
Honor.
the end of the day today, if you have anything else that falls into that category, I want you to give him copies.
Okay. Miss Antar, father would drop off Angelina at daycare on Monday, correct?
What time period are you referring?
Say over the last year.
Well, we started that in April of last year.
Okay, then as of April of last year, would you say that father typically would drop off Angelina to daycare
Yes.
on Monday mornings?
Yes.
And then on Monday mornings, the parents are to provide certain things for the child, correct?
What do you mean?
Like certain things, blankets, sheets. So in our case, where I would say blanket, sheet, pillowcase, backpack, ice pack, lunchbox, water bottle, and all those things are supposed to be provided weekly for said child, correct?
The child needs to have daily items as well as weekly, such as the blanket and sheets.
Okay. Now, when father, at the end of the week, you would bring said daughter to paternal grandmother's house, correct?
On the days she was actually there.
That was a yes or no question.
Well, no, I wouldn't, because there were some times when she wasn't there and I would have to find other arrangements at the last minute.
Okay. Outside of the few times she wasn't there, would you say you typically
Objection
bring...
to the form of the question. We haven't established that it was a few times.
I don't even know what we're talking about.
Fine. I'll reword the question. Outside of the time that she wasn't there, would you say you would bring the daughter to the paternal grandmother's house?
There were several occasions. There wasn't just one time.
I didn't
Multiple
say- that's
occasions
fine.
where she wasn't there.
Outside of those times, would you typically bring the daughter to the paternal grandmother's house, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever return those items so that father can bring them back on Monday?
I said to you many times I'd like it to be where pick up and drop off occurred at the school.
That's not what that wasn't
and
the
that
question.
way
Your Honor.
the blanket could be washed if that was a problem.
Were any of those items ever returned?
Which items?
Blanket, pillow, pillowcase, sheet, backpack, ice pack, lunchbox, water bottle?
I provide Angelina with a lunch and ice pack and everything every day and take it home and give her a new one every day. And if she has an accident, I will provide new bedding for her as well.
Okay.
Every time.
But did you ever return the father's belongings as
Your
far
Honor,
as...
I'm going to object and say, I'll provide it out of my own pocket if we move on.
Your Honor, what I'm trying to show is that every week she would keep the things for Angelina and say, oh, you have to buy new ones.
So, Mr. Lodice, this is exactly what I was trying to explain to you before. That it would be easier if I just heard this information from you in your testimony.
Okay.
Like, she doesn't agree, right?
Okay.
So we're spending a lot of time trying to get her to say things that she doesn't agree with. But you want
Okay.
to tell me those things. So it would be easier if I heard it from you.
Okay, then. I have no more questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Do you have any redirect, or you want to
One.
save it? Okay.
One redirect.
Go ahead.
So, Ms. Antar, it's been established that there have been quite a few times you have tried to get protective and/or restraining orders against Mr. Lodice, correct?
Yes.
And for one reason or another, most of them have been denied, correct?
Yes.
There was one, however, that was granted, right?
Yes.
And that's still in effect, isn't it? It's still in effect,
Objection, Your
isn't it?
Honor. That's not in this case.
So you can object. I can take judicial notice of all the court cases.
Okay.
And that's still in effect, correct?
Is that a protective order or a restraining
It
order?
is a restraining order.
Civil restraining order in this court?
Yes.
No. It's a criminal protective order, Your Honor.
There was, I believe, a restraining order in which one of the wasn't there one that was still granted where
No.
Don't interrupt.
I apologize.
My clerk is going to look up any pending orders between these.
I think the only order in effect is that Judge Griffin, I think, issued an order that the child is not to be left alone with Dominic. I think that is still an active order.
No, I had a hearing on
And I thought that was what,
I had a hearing on
Right,
that
I was-
order.
yeah.
I denied the emergency, I denied any relief under the emergency custody statute, but
Right.
I entered an order under the regular custody statute that while the police and DCF investigations were pending,
Gotcha.
that the father couldn't leave the child alone with Dominic.
All right.
So sounds like the DCF investigation is done, the New Britain Police Department investigation is not done. So that order's, you're right, still remains in place.
Still thing. So that's,
But that wasn't an emergency order.
gotcha. I'm sorry, I'm not
Okay.
the verbiage I didn't have down there. So that is still an order of the court, correct?
Yes.
And we were here, or we were on a Zoom last week, right?
Yes.
The week before, and you were told to turn your child over to Mr. Lodice at the grandmother's house, correct?
Yes.
And you did that.
Yes.
And like I said before, this was the most uneventful weekend in ages, wasn't it?
Correct.
I have no more questions.
Okay, you can step down, ma'am. Given the hour, we're going to wrap up. Attorney Cretella, I would like to reschedule this on with your input, so that we don't pick a date that then you have to continue. Do you want to get some options from the caseflow coordinator and talk to Mr. Lodice about them?
I will.
All right, she's
Do that right now?
she's there right now. So,
All right, I'll be right back.
ladies and gentlemen, we're going to recess, subject to Mr. Lodice. You're talking to Attorney Cretella about what options there are for rescheduling and picking one of those dates. Okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to go get a couple of dates and I'll be right back.
Okay.
And Mr. Lodice, one last thing for you.
Of course.
I want you to make a copy of all the things that you want the court to look at.
Yep.
And give them to Attorney Cretella today.
Okay.
So that he doesn't have to do it on the spot because that takes too long.
Okay.
Right? So
And-
all the things in your testimony that you want me to look at, you got to give them to him. I see you have copies. Fine. Just give him the copies in advance. Okay?
Okay. And now, would he do the same to me? Will I get his copies of evidence he's going to present? So I don't have to
He
get...
should, but I haven't gotten any so far.
Okay.
All right. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're in recess.
All right.